a non-governmental organization, the Forensic Anthropologists Foundation of Guatemala. And the very first sentence against a perpetrator of that massacre did not take place in Guatemala. It took place in the United States in a federal courtroom in Florida, thanks to the efforts of a unit inside the US Justice Department with the help of ICE to identify perpetrators of the Dos Eres massacre living in this country. So Dos Eres is an extraordinary case. It is an important case, and it is an amazing achievement for human rights and justice in Guatemala. But it is an outlier. There are very, very few cases like this because of the work that goes into this on the part, essentially, of civil society to make this possible. And for that reason, and for all of the other thousands of cases of the hundreds of massacres that have not been prosecuted or even investigated, of the extrajudicial killings, of the thousands of forced disappearances, of the rapes, of the cases of systemic torture, because of all of those cases that continue to be pending, if you will, in Guatemala, it is absolutely vital that we continue to press the Guatemalan government to step up to its role in assisting in the investigation, clarification, and possible prosecution of these cases. What has the government done to date? I mean, successive governments in Guatemala have not been completely silent or sitting with their arms crossed. The government signed the peace accords. The government joined in a truth commission and agreed to permit that commission to operate. The government set up a series of post-conflict institutions to address issues like reparations and human rights. In fact, the last government before this current one, President Colom's administration, created something called the Archives of Peace, which was an institution, not so much an archive, that's really a misnomer, because the Archives of Peace was an organization operating under the Secretary of Peace and under the presidency that gathered and served as a repository for digital copies, so not original copies, of government records that were important for understanding what had happened in the conflict. So there were some military records available through the Archives of Peace, again, digital copies of them. There were records about adoptions that took place during the conflict that helped people unravel some of the few kind of abducted or stolen children cases in Guatemala and others. The Archives of Peace also served a kind of social function. It organized conferences about the conflict. It put out reports that helped explain what had happened and explored the significance of the records they held. And it worked closely with and through a signed agreement with the public ministry to prepare expert testimony or analysis for cases that were going forward inside the justice system. So the Archives of Peace was a very important, I think, advance on the part of the government in support of post-conflict